So you get to be our final round the bend, heading home speaker. As you said earlier, you're the only guy between them and a cocktail. Let's start actually with a little poll. I did this with Pinterest, and I'm curious. Raise your hand if you are a Snapchat user.
Thank you.
So that felt like about a third,
Thanks.
maybe a little more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
awesome.
that still means there's 2/3 of the folks out here who are completely in the dark. So maybe you can enlighten us. How do you use Snapchat?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. We'll try to keep it short. The basic concept behind Snapchat has to do with the way that photography has changed in the last couple of years, given the rise of smartphones. And if we look at kind of photography historically, it's really been about saving memories, and that's really what the first generation of social media was about. So you would go to your friend's birthday party, and you would take a lot of photographs. You'd come home, you'd plug in your camera, you'd upload 100 photos, and all of your friends would talk about the photos online. And this idea was that you could build an identity or a profile online, and that your identity was the result of all of the, or the accumulation of all of the memories effectively that you had. So all of your experiences in one place online. And what we've seen with the advent of the mobile phone is that now that you have a camera directly connected to the internet, photos can be used to talk, which is kind of a new thing. And really what I think engendered a lot of confusion in the beginning of the service, because parents would come to us and say, why is my child taking 40 ugly photos a day, and 50 photos of the dog, or whatever? And parents would say, I would never take an ugly photograph. I would never have an ugly photo of myself. I'd do my makeup. We take photos as a family once a year, twice a year, maybe for the Christmas card. So this is insane that young people are taking 100 photos a day and that they look terrible. And we had to sort of explain that this is a little bit different, because those photos aren't really being used as memories; they're actually being used to talk. And now the dominant use case, I guess, for photos and videos on the internet is communication. So the majority of videos being sent back and forth are being used to communicate. And that's really the fundamental change that's driven our business. And we've expanded from that core product over the last 4 years. We can talk a little bit about that. But the core concept here is just that photos are different now, because photos are for communicating and not just saving memories.
Do you notice structures of language in the photos? Is there slang? Is there idiom? Are idiomatic kind of, you see pockets of different kinds of people using it different ways?
So we don't see the photos.
Do you guys believe that?
I think people use it a wide variety of ways, and we can see that more in stories.
Yeah, I think when we get to your business model, the fact that you don't see the photos is a very interesting fact. We've been so steeped in data over the past 10 hours. But it's interesting the approach that you've taken on the business model. Before we get there, do you want to show that short video that you brought?
We can't. I don't know if it's any good, but let's see.
Why don't we roll it? It's only about 45 seconds, which I guess is like 10 times longer than the average snap.
Yeah.
You managed to get a few local references in there.
It's like, thank God they used your ads. That would have been.
And we're going to get to those ads, but before we do, I want to hear, because one of the original ideas of Signal P&G was to bring the innovation from outside this area in. And so I want to hear a little bit about your story. Where did the idea come from?
Yeah, so in the beginning of building the service and sort of the first version, which was actually called Pickaboo, which is a terrible name because no one knew how to spell it. But that's where the ghost comes from, boo, like a ghost. So in the first version, the goal was really like, can you send a photo that disappears? Can you send a video that disappears? And it turns out you can't, because you can always take a screenshot. And that sort of led us to a bunch of questions, which was, if you can take a screenshot, does that invalidate the entire concept? And it turns out what we found, and maybe this is kind of a good way to talk about it, is that the ephemeral nature of Snapchat is really a tool. So I think it's been talked about as sort of like a cultural shift or something like that, but it's really not the case. And I think ephemerality as a tool makes conversation more fun and familiar. It's the way we've had conversations forever. And screenshotting or saving something that somebody says is just kind of like taking a note or writing it down. And so I think that familiarity in conversation, really formed the basis of the service and has led us to create other products that just feel familiar. So our Stories product, for example, all we did was put your photos and videos in chronological order, because we've always told stories beginning, middle, end. And we found that every other social media product was putting everything in reverse in a feed, which just didn't really make a lot of sense.
Snapchat is 4 years old, is that right?
Yeah.
4 years old. So you're a young company, and you have an appropriately low valuation of only about 20 billion. And you've grown extremely fast, right? How many employees do you have?
Like 500.
500 in 4 years. I've been there. That's hard. But even more amazing is the number of people that use it. So what are those numbers that you can reveal?
I guess most recent, like our official most recent thing, is nearly 100 million daily active Snapchatters in developed markets. So
almost 100 million daily, every day. And how does that, in terms of the overall users of the service, do you have a number for that?
We don't disclose.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that before today. I had to ask, however. And maybe that allows me to maybe now get into the business model. Everyone here, and obviously many of them have already started to work with you. But can you tell us about the actual ad product and where that came about? You've located that product inside of what you call Stories.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the most important thing to understand about our business is that it's really three little businesses in one. So we have the camera in the middle when you open the application. To the left, we have a communications business, and to the right, we have a content business. And we're going to monetize those businesses different ways over time. And we started with advertising in our content business. Really, that again began with Stories. Beginning, middle, end is sort of the concept. People are now, I guess, watching like 3 billion videos a day on our service. So there's a huge volume of video being consumed on our service. And what we found that made our Stories in particular really different and really helpful for advertising is that Stories are a compilation of clips. And typically on the internet, you only have like one clip. So you go to a video service and there's just one clip. And so in order to monetize that clip, you have to put a video in front of it, which we know irritates people, pre-roll or whatever. And that was kind of the first version of like monetizing clips on the internet. And the second version of monetizing clips on the internet is this feed-based unit where we found that people just scroll past them. And then we started working on Stories, which is a collection of videos. So maybe there's 50 little videos strung together, and that means that the consumer enters and starts watching a video immediately, starts getting great content immediately, and then sees an ad later on in that stream of video. And so I don't think that's like a breakthrough, obviously, because products like linear television have done that for a really long time. But it's sort of the first time that's really been done on the phone, for example, and it's meant that we have, I think, very high completion rates for our videos. We have video advertising that people actually watch. And part of that, kind of the second part of that, really has to do with format. So Snapchat's different because you create content in the same place that it's distributed. And most services are either really focused on distribution or really focused on creating content. But at Snapchat, we do both. And that means we can drive new formats. So we were, I think, some of the first folks to do full frame vertical video. And I know that because in the very early days, we had to rewrite the Android camera stack in order to get full frame vertical video, which was really frustrating when we had like three of us.
Now Google does it with YouTube, and they finally got around to it, but you had to write it first.
You said it. So
I did.
But what we found, in the early days when people were just trying our advertising products, they're like, look, we don't really want to cut video for phones. It's kind of the second screen. What if you just used our horizontal video? And we'd be like, okay, well, we'll run the horizontal and maybe we can recut it or something vertically for you. And some of the first people to really start cutting video vertically were the movie trailer folks, because they're comfortable cutting video all day long. And we found that we got 9-10x completion rates on full frame vertical video compared to the little horizontal like postage stamp size video that you normally see on your phone. And when we saw that, it was like, okay, obviously. And I think we were able to take those results and take them to people who really want to advertise on mobile and say, look, it's really important. This for at least our generation is the first screen. It's kind of the only screen at this point, and you should be making content, or at the very least repurposing your existing content so that it actually just fills the screen.
Have you noticed any, I don't know, effective habits or behaviors of brands on Snapchat that they do very well because they do what?
I think for us, the focus has been back on creating great content and telling a great story. So obviously, there's a great P&G example, of course, which was our Tide advertising in the Father's Day story. So we do these really cool things called live stories where we collect videos from thousands and thousands of people at different events or different cities, I guess millions of people in different cities, and piece together a linear sort of storyline. And for example, if you go to an NBA game, 20% of people at that NBA game are contributing to our live coverage of that game. So you really get lots of different perspectives from different events. And we did one of these for Father's Day, and so you have people all over the world celebrating Father's Day. And P&G had created really clever Tide advertising that was slotted in to the story. And the thing that really blew us away was, I guess there was like an 8% increase in purchase intent, which I guess is unusual. And which, credit to P&G for making great ads. But that was an example of in-context advertising that was really great, creative, told a funny story, and got the brand message across. And we were so surprised that we really started thinking about the role of brand advertising, especially for millennials, because there just aren't very many places that millennials can be exposed to or learn about a new brand. So for us, that was a very informative experience.
I can almost hear the gears going in the room about, it's a bowl of fresh powder I get to ski here. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I get the sense that people are leaning in and they want to work with this more. However, these folks are also very analytics driven, very ROI driven, and your ads don't really have traditional measurement or quantifiable, you don't stand up a dashboard for the advertiser to see exactly who clicked on what and for how long and whether or not they have you're not integrated with a data logic JavaScript pixel that tracks them to point of purchase. Are you ever going to be?
So we do a lot of sophisticated measurement, and we're always increasing those offerings over time. I think the big difference that we try to make is really targeting and tracking. And that kind of relates to even how we think about our product. So, on our service, we'll identify that someone had a conversation with someone else, but we don't store that content. And I think that that's a really important part of not misleading our consumers. And I think clearly there's now a market demand for products that are more respectful of privacy. And the funny thing about privacy, obviously, is that sort of once you give it up, you can't get it back, right? And so we've really tried to take kind of a slow and methodical approach to how we do targeting and how we do measurement in a way that respects our consumers. So we do obviously offer measurement products, and we'll be offering more over time, but in a way that's new. I mean, we've had to go to vendors and say, hey, we need to build something new together because it just doesn't work to compromise the privacy of our community.
One of the things that I imagine you must be going through, I mean, do you ever, I don't know, alone at night when no one's around, just gonna go, whoa.
I mean, I do it during the day,
how did that
too,
happen in 4 years? Like in the span of a college education, and actually right after you got out of college, if I'm not mistaken, you and your team have created a company that, is being valued in the tens of billions of dollars. Does that ever freak you out?
Always. No, I think we're really fortunate to have an absolutely terrific team. It's obviously grown really fast, but to have the opportunity to work with such outstanding people is probably the best thing in the world. So it's awesome.
And what was it like to have a company like Facebook copy you? They literally made a Snapchat killer, and then what was it like to watch it not work?
Like scary and then fun.
Sounds just about right. We have time for just a couple of questions before we're done for the day. So please, here is your opportunity to ask a question or two of Evan. Any questions? Come on, be brave. It's the end of the day. We've got one here. The question is, are older people using Snapchat?
So it's like 75% of our audience is above the age of 18. So
there are 100 million millennials just in the United States, and you have 100 million daily users. So does that mean? Let's put it this way: I don't use Snapchat except to answer the occasional snap from my daughter, which is like once a month. So do you expect that to change, or are you just going to wait for everyone to kind of get older?
I think what tends to happen, especially with new technology products, is that they're adopted by a younger audience because the younger audience has more time. And I think generally they're more open to learning about new things. But obviously, I think we've seen many times that these products expand their demographics, and that's already happened for us and continues to. So.
Cool. One last question over here.
We heard from another speaker that culture is the boss when you're not around. What is the culture that you're trying to build?
So the question is, what is the culture, just for the webcast and the other room where there's a lot of folks, what is the culture that you're trying to build in your company, I assume? Is that, yeah.
So we actually really care at our company about strong leadership, and that's something that we've really invested in. We go out and even before we some folks will build a team and then put a leader in. We scour the earth for really strong leadership, and then build the team. And sometimes that means it takes a little longer to build a team or whatever. But leadership is critical in our organization. We celebrate really strong leadership. I think the other thing too that's made a big difference for us is really trying to hire people with serious conviction in their ideas. So we do this kind of weird thing where we really expect people to, bless you by the way, we really expect people to have conviction in their ideas and fight for them, but at the same time we encourage people to change their minds. So I think the important thing is that we try to do that before we release products. But inside our company, it's really important to have that back and forth, where people feel really strongly about things, but also change their minds, and ideally before we release the product. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to have to cut it off, but we are running a little late, and I really appreciate you coming here and being with us at Signal. So thank you, Evan. That's great. Thank you very much.